Hi, my name is Dan, and I live in Thornhill, and I support the People's Party of Canada because I want more freedom and less government.
שלום, שמי ליאוניד, ובבחירות האלה אני מצביע PPC, כי כולנו צריכים שינוי, ודחוף.
My name is Alex, I'm from Thornhill, and I'm a Canadian Forces veteran and an immigrant. I'm voting for People's Party of Canada in this election because they are the only party that does not pander to special interest groups and respects individual freedoms.
Mabuhay! Ako po si Cherilyn Balbasta Duran, nakatira sa Thornhill. Iboboto ko ang PPC dahil sa kanilang balanse, detalyado at makataong plataforma.
Hi, my name is Jan. I live in Thornhill. I'm voting for the People's Party of Canada because I want someone who will put Canada first.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Евгений, и я живу в Торнхилле. Я голосую за People's Party of Canada, потому что это единственная федеральная партия, для которой слово «свобода» не просто пустой звук.
I am Vadim from Thornhill, and this year I'm voting for People's Party of Canada. This is the only party which advocates for smaller government and reduced spending, putting our money towards the things that matter instead of sponsoring government bureaucrats.
Sono Mario Greco di Thornhill. Io voto per il People's Party of Canada perché stampare un sacco di soldi non risolve i problemi come pensa Justin Trudeau. Invece fa il contrario.
Hi, I'm Sarah from Thornhill, and I'm voting for the People's Party of Canada because they are committed to preserving our fundamental rights and freedoms and the future of our children in this great country.
אתם ניצבים היום כולכם לפני אדוני אלוהיכם, ראשיכם שבטיכם, זקניכם ושוטריכם, כל איש ישראל.
Hi, good evening. It's nice to be with everyone tonight. We have a lot to talk about. It's very important what we're going to be talking about tonight on our show. And we have a special guest with us as well. And we'll bring him on very soon. But as with every show, we first a few words from the Parsha that's going to be read, the Torah Parsha, that's going to be read in every synagogue in the world. And after that, we'll get on with the issues. And there's very important issues. We have videos, we have memes we're going to be showing. We're going to be interviewing Samuel Greenfield, who's with the People's Party of Canada. He's got an interesting story to tell and really ties into what we're talking about, also trying to accomplish. So in this Parsha, this week's Parsha is Parsha's Nitzavim. And it starts off, and Moses says to the Jewish people, picture it. The Jewish people are going to be entering into the land of Israel, and Moses is going to die. And this is one of his last speeches to the Jewish people, words of wisdom, direction. You are standing today, all of you, before Hashem your God, the heads of your tribes, your elders, your officers, all the men of Israel. You imagine, they're all there. The other generation, they died off. Those who, from the sin of the spies, giving a bad report, speaking bad about Moses. And the punishment was you're going to die in the wilderness. And then the next generation came about, and they're the ones who are going to merit going into Israel under the leadership of Joshua. So Moses is giving the last words of wisdom to them. And he goes on and he continues, for you know how we dwelled in the land of Egypt, how we passed through the midst of the nations through whom you passed. You saw their abominations, their detestable idols of wood and stone. And anyways, you know, he goes on about what it was like in Egypt. What it was like in Egypt was sort of like Nazi Germany. It was backbreaking work. They're killing our kids. They're drowning our kids in the sea. This is going on for years and years and years of nonstop slavery. No hope in the world of ever escaping that. And Moses takes them out of Egypt. God gave Moses the gift to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. And you had the plagues on Egypt, and the sea parted, and the Jews traveled on dry land. And when they're in the wilderness, they're being attacked by various nations. So when Moses is telling the Jews to remember what you went through, everything you went through, don't aspire to be like them. Nothing they stood for is really good. And when you look at, you know, as a child of survivors, my parents survived in the Holocaust, Germany was a cultured nation, but that's what they did. They built gas chambers. We have something to be proud of. Judaism, the Torah, and the Jewish people built the state of Israel, and it's something to be very proud of. Yet you have Jews that are joining the BDS and slandering Israel. For what? For what purpose? You have a BDS organization throughout the world that was established in the West Bank, and their goal is the destruction of Israel. And you have Jews saying they're really not so bad. So how did I get to invite Samuel Greenfield onto our show? Well, he was door knocking in Thornhill. He's a candidate for the People's Party of Canada. He was door knocking, like you're supposed to do when you run in an election, going to meet people. And he knocks on the door of Bernie Farber, who was a former CEO of the Canadian Jewish Congress. And when he was with the Canadian Jewish Congress, he was adamant against the BDS. Today, not so much. We're going to be showing you information of who he associates with. Top leaders of the BDS movement. There's one, Aziza Kunji. She's with the CJPME. The CJPME established, it's called Vote Palestine. And they are lobbying politicians to adopt an anti-Israel position. We have a meme we could show about that also to just show you what I'm talking about. Here's this meme. Here's Bernie Farber with Aziza Kunji. So as it says, she's on the board of the CJPME. She was interviewed with the Electronic Intifada, that's a BDS publication, demanding the University of Toronto hire an anti-Israel lawyer to supposedly represent human rights. There's already a lot of anti-Semitism at University of Toronto. If you're going to invite someone to have a say in the direction of the university, and this person is BDS and doesn't believe Israel has any legitimate right to defend itself, what do you expect is going to happen on campus? So Bernie Farber is with her. And not just one instance does he go speaking with her at events. Many instances. And then when you look at the composition of the organization that the CJPME put together, this Vote Palestine organization, the partners of this organization, you have this organization, Samadun, we've written about them, we've had a show talking about them, that they openly promote violence against Israel, openly. And the government of Israel has listed Samadun as on a list of terror organizations, saying that they're a front for the PFLP. And yet they're a partner organization of the Vote Palestine. Then there's another group that is a partner of this Vote Palestine, Beit Zoton. Beit Zoton invited, I remember this, a few years ago, they invited anti-Semite, Jew hater, Holocaust denier, Ken O'Keefe. I mean, we have a video of this guy. This is unbelievable, This guy was on the ship that left Turkey with BDS people to break through the blockade to Israel. He's with the boat to Gaza. And I believe he assaulted an Israeli soldier as well. Claims to be a former U.S. Marine. The guy is an open anti-Semite. Yeah, we'll show the video of him. I just got a message in a few minutes. Goes on saying that Hitler was not so bad on one video. Goes on other videos. The so-called Holocaust, denies the Holocaust. He's even quoted as saying, F the Jews. And again, he was given a platform by Beit Zoton. Now we have video of the event at the Beit Zoton as well. I led a protest there when this was going on. I confronted this Ken O'Keefe. And we filmed what kind of people were going in to Beit Zoton to attend his speech. And it was your standard people who attend these anti-Israel BDS protests against Israel in Toronto. And they're standing by Ken O'Keefe. They're standing by Ken O'Keefe. So where's Bernie Farber in all this? That he's
if Israel is inherently a racist state, if it is inherently an apartheid state, then I want no part of Israel. It has no place in this world, and it must, in its current form, if you want me to use some inflammatory language, in its current form should be destroyed. Just like the UN in its current form should be destroyed. Just like the American Empire in its current form should be destroyed. Just like the British Empire in its current form should be destroyed.
Let's get into real history, and there's no real reason for people to have been, praising America for its policies, not for a long time. And that includes World War I and World War II, big time. I mean, the idea that we were the good guys is a bunch of shit, and we can point out a bunch of things about what we did and what our so-called enemies did. And, in particular, we can look at certain aspects of World War II. And that is one of the things that I've been talking about on this trip. And the reason why is because there have been plenty of people before me who pioneered, the truth in this subject, and they have paid heavy prices. I mean, there's some really good people out there. But the reason why I find it necessary, especially in America, to talk about World War II, and in particular certain aspects of World War II, is because they are so poignant and so important and so effectively affecting us today. From these historical events that happened in World War II, we see the result of that and feel it profoundly to this day, especially the Palestinians. And anyone who says they care about Palestine, who is falling prey to this political correctness bullshit and being coerced into using the approved fucking language, to me is not doing a service to the Palestinians.
Yeah, there you go. We have lots of video on Ken O'Keefe with his anti-Semitism. He also justifies people like, says people like David Duke are not so bad. The former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. He doesn't find him racist or anything. So Beit Zoton rolls out the red carpet for Ken O'Keefe, and Beit Zoton is partners with the Vote Palestine organization, which was set up by the CJPME. And Bernie Farber associates with Aziza Kunji, who's on the board of the CJPME. And what's going on here? And Bernie Farber is silent about this. This isn't the only BDS person that Bernie Farber was filmed with and is documented hanging out with at all. But anyways, let me bring on our guest, Samuel Greenfield. He could fill us in on what he's what he's involved with, what's happening in that particular riding, and his encounter with Bernie Farber, and then what the party is trying to promote as well. There's a lot of good stuff that they stand for. In fact, Samuel, how are you doing?
Hey, not too bad. Thanks for having me on the show, Mayor. It's great to be here. So let me tell you a little bit about what happened with Bernie Farber. So we're out canvassing, myself and two volunteers, and there was a house that had one of those signs, "Hate has no home here," which is kind of a smorgasbord of different very left-wing causes. And I didn't actually knock on that door myself. It was actually one of my volunteers. And he is the kindest guy. He is very gentle. He's very good at what he does. And I believe he actually used to, he was involved in working for Peter Kent, and he's disenfranchised with which is the local MP here who's retiring. And he is disenfranchised with the Conservative Party, just like I am. And he knocks on Bernie's door. And they don't talk for very long. And Bernie basically just unloads on him what he thinks about the People's Party, etc. And then he shuts the door and goes back inside. So my volunteer tells me about the experience. And then later that evening, Bernie posts on Twitter that about an encounter he had with his local PPC candidate, and he totally mischaracterized the event, not just because what he said about the PPC, etc., but also because he confused my volunteer for me. He didn't even know who was at his front door, and so I don't know how you can take him seriously if he doesn't even know who's standing right in front of him. Why would you take anything else that he has to say about that person seriously? So what Bernie Farber was trying to do is what the left does very commonly, is they take people who are genuine conservatives, who love their country, who want to live in freedom, who want to have a dispensation where traditional conservative values are reflected in society. And then they try and take those people down as racists and bigots and any other kind of slur that they can come up with. And it's interesting to note that there's an article about this in the Globe and Mail from a little bit earlier this year. But the Conservative Party of Canada appears to have paid Warren Kinsella's consulting firm over $100,000 during the last election to basically try and dig up dirt on and smear Maxime Bernier as a bunch of awful things, which he isn't. So there's this concerted effort to spread lies and slander regarding the People's Party of Canada and regarding Maxime Bernier. And so we felt that we had to counter that. And so that's why we ended up actually creating a meme, which maybe if you have that there, you can share that with your audience. We decided to share that on social media because what ended up happening was Bernie deleted his tweet. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a very powerful admission that he was wrong. But nevertheless, there are rumors that go around, and those rumors are not true, and we have to counter those in order to get our message through, because people are afraid of our message. People who are in power would like to stay in power, and the message that we have, which is the message of, oh, there you go. Yeah, so you can see on the left is Bernie's original tweet, in the middle is my response, and then you can see that he deleted his tweet.
So we just see if we could read that out.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to? Do you want to read it, or shall I?
You can read it out.
I probably have the biggest view of it. So if you start from the upper right-hand corner, Bernie Farber is saying basically, my PPC riding candidate showed up at my door today. He's very woke. He says 2 days, so he must be up with the hip generation. He couldn't spell out the word two, or he just can't spell the word two. But he let him know that he thought about a member of his community running for again, he sticks in numbers. I think that's to appeal to the younger crowd, like my children. A party that has made common cause with white supremacists. That's the same people who say that President Trump was an anti-Semite, with an Orthodox Jewish daughter. But instead of continuing to editorialize, I'll just keep reading that Canada's multicultural ethos. He couldn't leave my door fast enough. Well, he goes on to say a variety of things, but Samuel, your response is that was one of your kindest team members who was at your door. I would have loved the chance to dialogue with you, even though it was clear you were not. I'm disappointed that you would resort to baseless smears or schmears, depending if you're talking about a bagel or a comment. Thornhill expects better of a leader such as yourself. And he goes on to say many things. But the interesting thing, like you said, is that the tweet was deleted. But as we all try to do, now that we're in this internet generation, is screenshot. And there they are. So we can't deny what's happened. And there you got People Party of Canada fighting back against the lies and against the counterculture. And back to you guys.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he lobs the white supremacist accusation at you. Now leave that aside for a second, because I know it's a bunch of nonsense. But leave it aside for a second. Here I showed ironclad what this BDS group is. And this CJPME, they are probably one of the more sophisticated BDS groups in Canada. They try to, they're polished. Their message, the BDS message is anti-Semitic, it's hate, I'm revolted by it. But this particular organization, they are polished. And there's Bernie at events speaking side by side with Aziza Kunji, who's on the board. Now, either Aziza Kunji is not aware of these associations they have, where they set up the Vote Palestine, and their partners are these organizations that roll out the red carpet for people like Ken O'Keefe, or Samadon, that rants and raves on social media about violence and global intifada, and they show pictures and memes with machine guns and Kalashnikovs and the whole 9 yards like that. Do I know if she's fully aware? Maybe she's on vacation or studying or working after hours or just not interested or something. Do I know? I don't see her signature on the thing, but she's on the board of the CJPME, and maybe Bernie Farber has no idea what the CJPME is, and therefore has no clue that the organization they set up, Vote Palestine, that they partner with these organizations that roll out the red carpet for raving anti-Semites. But on the other hand, he threw the accusation at you that you're associated with white supremacists. What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's absurd. It's just it's an effort to, what it is if I had to guess, I would say that Bernie Farber obviously is a left of center individual, and what he's doing is he's trying to put his thumb on the scale for the team that he wants to see do well. And the last thing he wants is to see a freedom-loving, strong conservative movement in Canada. And so he's going to attempt to smear us in an attempt to take us down. And I think it's as simple as that. And so obviously he's not going to put the magnifying glass on his own side, because then he's going to discover some very unpleasant truths, such as what you've just been talking about.
Let me just ask you a question about what you just said. Do you even need a magnifying glass for this?
Well, apparently not. Apparently, even if you forgot your glasses, you would still be able to see it, right?
Go on.
No, so it's ridiculous, and this is the downfall of so many so-called conservative leaders. Is they start off in an election campaign, or they start saying something that's popular, and the next thing you know, you've got a whole bunch of people trying to take them down, and they crumble, right? And I think that's why Donald Trump was so successful, is because he took people head on and he called them out on it, right? And it was ridiculous. They were accusing Trump of being an anti-Semite. Nothing could be further from the truth. They accused him of being a white supremacist. Everyone knows that's absurd on its face. And so, conservatives, there's a whole generation of weak leaders, and you see this in Canada here especially. The last great conservative leader we had was Stephen Harper, and you see how carefully he managed all interactions with the media because he knew what they were going to do, and they did that. You remember in the election campaign that he unfortunately lost in 2015. I think if I recall correctly, they tried to peg him as an Islamophobe. So they do this. This is just you have to expect this. And you have to laugh it off, but you have to push back. You can't just sit there and take it. You have to push back. You have to show why it's not true, and you have to really fight back. Otherwise, they're going to just push you over, and they're going to destroy your reputation in the minds of right-thinking people.
100%. Something just comes to mind. Let me just see that. 1 second. 1 second. This would be interesting.
Well, meanwhile, speaking about Bernie Farber's many attributes, I thought this would be a fun time to remind everybody of his comments that we should all be Antifa. I mean, it's as if he doesn't realize what Antifa is all about, and it's the epitome of alt-left when he forgets the origin of it, and it's basically a big anti-Semitic group. In modern times, they tried to burn down Berkeley, which was a bastion of free speech when I was a teenager. So anyway, I thought while you had a minute, I thought I'd slip that in, and I'm out.
Yeah,
again.
one other thing. So apparently, Aziza Kunji, she also wrote an article a few months ago. I think it appeared, maybe about 10 months ago. She wrote an article regarding food vendors. So food vendors has been in the news. It hasn't been in the news in a while, but they're I thought they're supposed to be a restaurant. Anyways, they're being taken for the Human Rights Commission and all kinds of accusations of anti-Semitism, vile anti-Semitism, and human rights complaints. And looks like she may lose her business license as well. We'll find out later this month. In fact, according to the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, food vendors fits the definition of anti-Semitism. But Aziza Kunji wrote an article, seems like in defense of food vendors. And it's interesting because this caught my mind because food vendors on their Instagram account just a few days ago, they shared a video and they asking their supporters to keep sharing. And this is of in Gaza at the border, where a terrorist shot and severely wounded an Israeli border guard. And just a couple of days ago, he died from it. And there were just mass amount of Israelis mourning him, and the family completely devastated. So food vendors sharing this video of the shooting of this Israeli border guard and saying, keep sharing, like they're happy about it. And there's celebrations going on in Gaza about hearing the death of this particular soldier. So Bernie Farber associates with Aziza Kunji. She wrote an article in defense of food vendors. I'm not saying she wrote an article about what happened at the border, but maybe she could write an article condemning food vendors for putting out this such a video and saying keep sharing. Seems like a positive thing to do, to shoot Israeli border guards. Just made me sick when I saw that. Do we have the video? Okay.
Yes, we do. Let me cue that up in 10 seconds. 9. And here it goes. It's a little video that I put together, basically just talking about leading up to the murder and the aftermath of it. So basically, as we know, there was some violent riots. These weren't protests like the alt-left like to call them. These are actually violent riots. You know, as we could see, Hamas congratulating the Taliban on the recent success. So this is prior to the shooting. And this is a celebration being had after this video. They're showing it all over social media.
That's where he was shot, through that hole where they were shooting.
Exactly. And there we have the sad first comment. The news came out that he was shot point blank range. And they're investigating while he is in intensive care. And sadly, several days later, in spite of multiple operations and attempts, he didn't survive. This is some little clip from his funeral, which is also being circulated on Palestinian and Gazan media as a celebration. So I thought it'd be appropriate to just give a couple of lines from Kaddish for him before we talk a little more about his passing and his life. So I thought most appropriate would be from Yosa Rosenblatt, who's regarded as perhaps the best chazan in history. So the young murdered Israeli is Beryl. You know, he was a son, he was a brother. He was with the military for 5 years. He dedicated his life to the military and to saving lives. He stopped many terror attacks, and he's shot dead and killed, and he died on the 30th after being shot on the 23rd. So during a recent concert by Rodam Cohen, he decided to take a break from the concert to do a little memorial to Beryl. Again, while the Palestinians are celebrating, we're still mourning.
סמל ראשון בראל חדריה שמואלי, זיכרונו לברכה. אני רוצה את השיר הבא להקדיש לזכרו. מוכי, אפשר להוריד את כל ההוראות? חוץ מאת זה? אפשר להוריד כולם את גם למעלה שם, אני אבוא אליכם למטה, אני רוצה. בואו נדליק טלפונים.
Meanwhile, in the West Bank and in Gaza, they are giving out candies in celebration of the murder. Point blank range in the head.
شباب ايش مناسبة الحلو هذا؟ مقدر الجندي يسموه لي اروني ماذا القناص اي حدا بفكر اي شخص على حدود هذا مصيره.
Some of the worst, disgusting comments are on social media, where they showed the picture of him with his father at the bedside. A good Jew is a dead Jew. And yet that doesn't get banned from Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And they're saying that it's the fate of every son who goes to the Gaza border. Well, don't send your sons to the Gaza border. I mean, that's such an obvious cure to that problem.
You know, I'm almost tempted to say, send your guys back to Bernie Farber's door and say, Bernie, are you aware of any of this?
Well, that, and, you know, I can't help but think when I see that how foreign the situation of Israel is to almost every Canadian. And I think that's the problem, or one of the big problems in our society, you see, is that we've become We've had it so good for so long. We don't have a border with a hostile country that wants to destroy us. We're affluent, we're comfortable, and we do not know what it's like to send our children to a military setting where they might be killed by an enemy. We don't know what it's like to make true sacrifices for our country. You know, I mean, my grandparents' generation knew that, but not mine, not my parents.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. But you know, when you're you know, you're interested in doing good for the country and getting involved in politics and putting in the time to run for a party, and you get this accusation of white supremacy from a guy that associates with people from groups that stand for the worst of the worst. BDS, destroy Israel.
Yeah, it's
white supremacy. I mean, you got Chinese that are supporting you. You got blacks who are supporting you. You got a multitude of all kinds of different mixed minorities
from every tribe and every nation, Mayor.
Yeah.
What unites people in the PPC is it's not some kind of physical attribute like skin pigmentation or where your parents or grandparents were from. It's what unifies people in the PPC is shared values, and it's values that are at the that's at the root of every successful country, every single civilization. And those values are values of respect, limited government, personal responsibility, freedom. Those are the values that made Canada great. Those are the values that made America great. Those are the values that make Israel great. And what I've seen here in Canada, especially over the last year and a half, and this is kind of, how I kind of tie this in. You have this society which is very complacent, that's very tuned out, and that's very caught up in the pursuit of temporal physical pleasures, right? Where am I going on the weekend? What restaurant am I going to? What concert am I going to? What am I going to eat? What am I going to drink, right? And we've let the higher things go. And I see this when I canvass, and it's so frustrating to me. There are people behind some of the doors who don't know what the issues are, and they don't care. And it blows my mind. We're at this point now in our country, in our nation's history here in Canada, where decisions of great consequence are being made. And some people don't even realize that, either because they don't care to, or because they're ignorant of history, and so they have no context in which to place these decisions. But there are all kinds of very concerning precedents being set. The government can tell you that your business has to be closed. Your business can prevent you from going to your synagogue, to your church, to your shul. The government can tell you with whom you can associate, with whom you can transact. I mean, this is absurd. Did you see I'm sure you saw the announcement today from the Ford government. I mean, what kind of a country do we want to live in?
Right.
It's very concerning. That's why I'm involved. And I wish that people like Bernie Farber, first of all, rather than trying to make me and the party I'm running for look bad in the eyes of the public, why didn't he just give me a call? My phone number is everywhere, and just say, "Hey, Samuel, what are you about? Are you for these things? I've heard, or I think these things about you. Maybe you can clear the air." That would be showing respect.
Right.
But no, and so maybe if Bernie's concerned about people's rights being violated, or caring for people he thinks are oppressed, maybe he needs to look at what's going on in society around us today and turn some of his energies on that. Might be a lot more productive than hanging out with the BDS crowd.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's unbelievable. It's a completely different Bernie Farber from the Bernie Farber that I knew when he was with the Canadian Jewish Congress. Completely different. He would call me up if he heard that, we used to speak regularly. CFRB or other radio stations would call me for interviews on issues. We were confronting Sid Ryan, who led CUPE at one time, and he was very involved with the BDS. And he wanted resolutions passed at CUPE conventions against Israel. So I led protests and that. So I'd had radio stations calling me up for interviews and that, and they wanted to have me on with Sid Ryan on as well. And Bernie would say to me, Mayor, this is like, remember the era of Ernst Zundel? You know, we don't sit down on the radio with people like that because you're going to potentially give them a platform inadvertently. The same should apply to Sid Ryan. That's what he would say to me. And I'd say, well, you know, maybe you got a point, Bernie. But here he is sitting down with people from the BDS and speaking at a podium, sharing the podium with them and never condemning. So that's Bernie today.
Well, and look,
claims against you.
Hey, I hope I have the opportunity to meet a Bernie in a civil and formal setting. It'd be great to chat with him. As long as there's a sense of respect that's mutual, that goes both ways. I think I as I mentioned earlier, I believe in pushing back, but I also believe in being respectful. And I think that you can push back and be firm and get your point across, and you can still be respectful to people. And that's a value that I personally try to hold to. Is not to lose it on people, not to just throw things out there that aren't true about people. Try to treat people with respect, but never compromise on the truth. You can never compromise on truth.
Absolutely, because then you stand for nothing.
Yeah, and you become complicit in lies, and lies are harmful, right? When we live lies out, it has an effect in the reality around us, not only for ourselves but for others.
How is the party doing now, anyways? Maxime Bernier and party, how are they doing?
I think it's growing in leaps and bounds. There are so many people out there who are not happy with what's being offered by mainstream political parties. We call it the uniparty. They're all promising to expand government. They all base their policy decisions on polling. So they're basically looking at what do we think people want, and then try and offer that to them in the hope that you will buy their votes, bribing people with their own money or with policies that will catch their eye. And that's not what the PPC is about. The PPC is about, here are our principles: freedom, fairness, respect, and personal responsibility. And those principles can be applied to many different policies, all different policies. And if you don't like that, that's fine. But one day you will appreciate those policies, because when you run a country recklessly, when you run massive deficits, when you cater to the radical left, eventually you're going to run your country into the ground, and people are going to be looking for the tried and true conservative ideas. And so right here in Thornhill, there are so many people who are contacting us for lawn signs. There are people who have voted for different political parties. I even had a lady from the NDP call me and say that she was going to vote for me. And it had to do with our position on allowing people to personally decide whether they would take a vaccine, for example, right? A lot of former Conservative Party supporters. I mean, that's the natural. We are the true conservatives. And so I think that you're going to see some surprises on election night.
Very interesting. Very interesting. No, I know people who got involved with the People's Party when it was founded. Salim Mansour, I believe he's from London, Ontario. He's with a certain network of people that I associate with. Good people, very good people. Maxime Bernier, he's a very quality guy. He was in the Harper government. So,
right.
Good guy. Good guy.
And it's a big tent. You've got your libertarians, you've got your conservatives, you have people from all different backgrounds. But what unites us is, I think, this understanding that in history, when you look at history, especially the 20th century is the recent example of this. The biggest threat to people, it's not It's not COVID, right? It's not opinions that other people have that we find unpleasant or distasteful. The biggest threat is government. Government is, and not by some small margin. It's the enormous body counts of the last century, right? You look at Hitler, you look at Stalin, you look at Mao. This brutal and systematic destruction of people and their livelihoods. And you always have to be on guard against that. I mean, that's what you're doing on the Never Again podcast, is you're standing on guard to ensure that something like the Holocaust never happens again. And I think what people forget is that there isn't just some kind of inevitable, freedom is not just some kind of inevitable conclusion in a society. Freedom is actually a historically rare event. The prosperity and the freedom that we enjoy are highly unusual based on the human experience. And so you have to fight for that. You always have to be on guard. And the moment you become complacent, it's like a diet or a workout routine. The minute you stop caring, the minute it all starts reversing. And it's actually that it's the disorder and the chaos and the oppression that is the norm of history.
I think we got another element today, like they call it the woke generation. And I think this woke ideology is another form of fascism.
Absolutely.
Or whatever the word should be today. But this totalitarian rule that you have no right to question anything. No right to question. And not only should you not question, just like the disaster that happened in Afghanistan, Biden, his administration, the kinds of people that he picked to be part of his administration, I believe some of the worst of the worst. And they've refused to answer questions, even from media sources who I don't like CNN, but CNN is starting to ask questions, and that's media places. The reporters have to ask, or there's no value if they don't. Nobody's going to watch them then if they don't ask anything.
Sorry, CNN has any value left, Mayor?
Well, not at all. But storming out of news conferences, Anthony Blinken refusing to take questions, Secretary of State, the President Joe Biden walking out, refusing to answer any questions. It's and you're told, and if you ask, you're shut down, or you're removed from Facebook, from social media. How dare you question this? How dare you have a different perspective? That's what's going on right now. And we see it with the Liberal Party as well here. Attacks on free speech. You have Ezra Levant from the Rebel being silenced, being arrested for just absolute nonsense. And he's just trying to do his job, ask questions.
Well, I would also point out too, and I wouldn't be doing my job properly if I didn't. But this kind of woke ideology has also infected the Conservative Party of Canada as well. Yep. And that's why that's a big part of the reason why I'm not involved with them anymore, is that, or not voting for them anymore. They look how they kicked out Derek Sloan out of the Conservative Party of Canada, right? A true conservative guy. They wanted to kick him out, and then they baked up this ridiculous story about a donation that he accepted from somebody he had no idea he was accepting a donation from. Look at how they kicked out this candidate, Jonas Smith, in the Yukon just recently, apparently over his opposition to vaccine mandates and vaccine passports. The guy almost beat the Liberals in the last election. So when you have, it's that intolerance of ideas across a spectrum. And I get it. You can't run as an NDP candidate in the Conservative Party, but you have to recognize that conservatism is a tent, and you have to have tolerance for the different perspectives that are in there. And clearly the mainstream Conservative Party is actually ashamed of many of the true conservatives. And that's why people are migrating over to the People's Party. because they don't see the difference anymore between Justin Trudeau preventing people from voting a certain way, or Aaron O'Toole preventing people from expressing themselves in the party a certain way.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. 100%. I agree with you on that. There's no doubt about it.
And that's why I like Maxime Bernier, because even if I don't agree with Max on everything, that's okay, because Max is going to respect me, and if I were elected to Parliament, I'm not going to be whipped to vote a certain way based on what Max thinks about every single issue, and that's not the way it should be, because you're electing a person because you think that they have your values and you trust their character, and you expect them to vote based on those values and that character that you voted for.
No, 100%. 100%. Let me just see. I think our doctor in the studio has a video that he wants to share. Is that the case?
I thought you never asked. Hey, so this is basically it's a list of all the items that we left as gifts to the Taliban, which now they could use, they can give away, they could sell to Hamas and Hezbollah. The person speaking, I'm going to introduce him briefly, who gives the list, because it reminds me of when Benghazi happened, and while Hillary Clinton is saying it's no big deal, the people who survived said it was, and you had the woke spectrum saying, oh, Hillary can't be lying, and you had those people who kind of had brains saying, well, who are you going to believe? A special forces who was there, or somebody sitting in her office? So here's a little introduction before I give the actual, or he gives the actual list. So basically, this is James Banks, who served in the United States Senate. While in office, he continued to serve in the Navy, and there's a law which allowed him to accept active duty, and his position was put on hold. Well, while he was serving for active duty over in Afghanistan, instead of leaving his position vacant, he found the perfect person to replace him during his absence. That was his wife actually took up his Senate position while he served in Afghanistan. And this is his wife, Amanda, and she held the office during the legislative session. And, they have 3 kids, so it's not like an easy job. One's in Afghanistan, one's serving in the Senate. So let's a little bit out to James Banks, the senator. I won't read this. You can read it. You can look at it. But he's a pretty credible source, I would have to say. And again, I'm trying to make that obvious before we go and hear his commentary on what he knows was left behind. So he served as a foreign military sales officer. That was his job, was bringing stuff over to give or to sell. So according to him, $85 billion were left.
So I was on the front lines of acquiring the equipment that the Americans provided and turned over to the Afghan army and the Afghan police. I'm going to read to you what is so painful for me and so many other Afghan veterans who served in that capacity, others who serve as a part of the train, advise, and assist equip effort in helping the Afghans. We now know that due to the negligence of this administration, the Taliban now has access to over $85 billion worth of American military equipment. That includes 75,000 vehicles, over 200 airplanes and helicopters, over 600,000 small arms and light weapons. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world. But they don't just have weapons. They also have night vision goggles, body armor, medical supplies, and unbelievably, unfathomable to me and so many others, is that the Taliban now has biometric devices which have the fingerprints, eye scans, and the biographical information of the Afghans who helped us over the last 20 years.
So I don't know about you, but I kind of think he's a little more credible than President Biden. Just my opinion, but I'll let you guys take it from here.
What a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, and they're giving weapons now to the Taliban is giving weapons to Iran, American arms.
Well, I think it really demonstrates the perils of getting involved in other countries when you try to go in and you try to nation build. You can't just copy paste democracy from the West and put it in a place like Afghanistan, because of course, this kind of gets back to our earlier discussion, the shared values, the foundation of your culture, your civilization. And until there is kind of the precursors there, that's gonna flounder, right? And now it's a disaster, and now they've left in a way which is a disgrace to the many men who gave their lives to fight there. I mean, there is something to be said, of course, for better in the streets of Kabul than in the streets of New York or in the streets of Toronto, right? But I can't help but think that if this were Stephen Harper or Donald Trump, a good conservative leader, this would have been handled much more tactically and much more gracefully, instead of this total embarrassment that has befallen Canada and America and every other country that was involved in this. It's very sad.
I can't understand the rationale for the Biden administration that they're going to pull the military out first and then worry about the people and the equipment afterwards. I don't think you have to be even past grade 2 or grade 3 to know that don't pull the military out first. But I guess, in the woke culture, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you don't have that. Look, what the woke culture does is it destroys all of the values that we have in our culture. It attempts to deconstruct them and replace them with really garbage substitutes. And so all that sense of chivalry, that sense of honor and bravery, it chips away at that until it cracks open and collapses. I mean, that's what the radical left does on our university campuses and in pretty much every single major organ of power and influence in our society. And yeah, so then you end up with a situation where you have the soldiers, as it were, like the men heading down in the lifeboats and the ladies remaining on the deck.
No, 100%. 100%. Also, there's just so much. Like 2 months ago, the American embassy in Afghanistan, they flew the LGBT flag. Like, who are they reaching out to? Do they think the Taliban really respects that? It's, they're already executing people in Afghanistan now, the Taliban. That's what they're doing. They kill gays. Women don't have rights. The list goes on. And the woke culture, like in the United States, here too, in competitions, a transgender against a woman in kickboxing, mixed martial arts, weightlifting. I mean, it's insane. You put a transgender against a transgender, okay, but against a woman? I mean, it's nuts. And to argue about it and to say something, oh, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, I don't even know what the word would be, but that's the woke culture. And therefore, and the fruits are right there of what happened with this woke culture going so far in Afghanistan, that it becomes part of the leadership of the military that we're going to pull the military up first, and then we'll worry about the people later. And then we're going to actually say that the people who didn't make it out, well, it's your fault.
Yeah. So exactly, when your reality becomes a lie, then it has a profound effect on what happens in the real world. So you're right. People are more focused on virtue signaling than they are with actually solving real problems. It's a big issue. It's like the talkers versus the doers. So the left, they love to talk, but the people who actually get stuff done are the doers, and the doers have to be based always in reality. And when all you do is talk, you don't have to be you don't have to acknowledge reality to the same extent. But eventually it catches up with you. As Michael Knowles says, I think it was Michael Knowles on the Daily Wire, reality always reasserts itself.
I hope so. I mean, I really hope so. But, well, one thing I could say with the woke culture, in terms of the future down the road, the woke culture, their demographics is low. There's no question about it. Many of them don't believe in having kids, or maybe they'll have one kid, the experiment kid. That's it. That's not, that's demographics in the negatives when it's like one kid per family or no kids. So there's no future for them, no long-term future. But the amount of damage they could do anyways right now by having woke teachers, woke professors.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Look, I would call them the woke religion, okay? And yeah, they don't tend to have a lot of kids, right? Because they live selfish and hedonistic lives,
right? And
they don't have a strong sense of tradition or family values. But they're very good at getting converts because they control, as I mentioned earlier, all the major organs of power in society. They control the public school system. They control higher education. Most of the people who work in mainstream media are very left wing, and the people who produce all of our entertainment in the music and television industry, again, it's the woke crowd. So until we find a successful way to counter that, you could have 10 kids, and but if you don't bother to raise them as conservatives, if you send them to a public school, and then they get activated in university by radical left-wing students' unions and professors, it's pointless. So you have to have a total game plan. Like you have to, and you see this a little bit with people like Ben Shapiro, who I really admire in the US, where they're actually trying to create like a parallel to the entertainment that people enjoy watching, but it's not based in some kind of far left-wing garbage premises about reality. And so you can kind of draw people in, and in the process, you can have an effect on how they think about issues.
What would how does the People's Party tackle the issue of wokeism? What does Maxime Bernier, what's his position? What does he say? I mean, I know he's not for it, but how to correct the situation in society?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is by getting, look, the way in which the woke agenda is pushed on us is through government, right? Because government is the only organization in society which it can actually force its way on you, right? Private organizations can't do that. And so the smaller the government is, and the more autonomy that individuals have, then the more freedom we have to be able to raise our children the way we believe they ought to be raised, with conservative values. And also by protecting our fundamental freedoms from those who would take them away, like Justin Trudeau, Bill C-10, Bill C-36, restricting our ability to speak out, freely without fear of being brought before a human rights tribunal, or commission, like, for example, Ezra Levant has been. So those are the way that you push back against the woke agenda. And also you talk about ideas. And again, that's why I'm involved in the People's Party of Canada, because they have good ideas and because there's room for me to talk about ideas. If you ran with the Conservative Party of Canada, you would have to stay on their script. I don't want to stay on their script. I want to be able to speak out freely with ideas. And when you do that, when you talk about ideas, and if they're good ideas and you have a platform, then and they seem reasonable and they make sense, then you're going to attract people. And that's how we start to push back against this in my mind.
Okay, well, listen, I want to wish you all the best. Really, you're working hard at it, and
thank you.
And I've received some messages from people already that are in that riding, and they're definitely going to support you, and they're
I
pushing.
appreciate that greatly.
You know, it's unfortunate that there's a town hall that's going to be at a synagogue in Thornhill, and they didn't invite you to. I mean, you're with a legitimate party, and they have all the different parties, including the Green Party representative there. So why can't they have from your particular party? That's it's disappointing, but I know you're going to persevere anyways, and we're going to make some noise about that as well, because your voice shouldn't be silenced in the community. You got a lot to say, and you stand for great values.
I appreciate that. Sooner or later, we will prevail. I have no doubt about that. And I understand that, respect isn't just given out, it's earned. And so we're working very hard to earn people's respect, with the hope that they will put pressure on the organizations and leaders who are hosting debates, etc., to invite us. And look, I respect private organizations' right to have whoever they want at the debate. So if they don't want me there, their house, their rules. I had very respectful correspondence with one of the there's a rabbi who hosted the debate at the Bayat on Clark on Monday night, and we hopefully next time will be there. And it's disappointing to not be there. I think it's disappointing for the community, because I think people want to hear fresh ideas. It ended up just being the Liberal and the Conservative candidate. It's boring.
Yeah, no kidding. That's unfortunate. But anyways, let's see. Our doctor in the studio, is there something that you need to add to this that we didn't show?
Well, I think you guys got it pretty full, and we've been going for an hour and a half. That's pretty good. I do have a closing song whenever you're ready for it, which I think is pretty poignant under all the things that are going on. I did also want to make a quick commentary on the woke team, which just was elected to the official wokest team in America with their two kings. And here they are. It's Ben and Jerry together with woke America, and we'll just call it Northern America. How it managed to infiltrate the country, kind of serendipitously, without even people realizing who the money was going to. And they were supporting the Ben and Jerry's Foundation, and it was going to Black Lives Matter, to terrorist supporting groups. And just incredible if you look at what Ben and Jerry's did. Again, I just didn't want to leave that out. And then when you're ready, I'm going to say a couple of comments about the song of the week before we play it. And then song of the week, you both can have a closing comment.
Yeah. Samuel, closing comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. The election that we're having right now, that I'm running in and trying to put in a lot of effort to get our message out in, it's very consequential. And this is our opportunity to exercise our right in our democratic system. And let's go and let's make sure that we vote for the person who truly represents our values, rather than just the person who we think can beat the guy that we don't like. Because we've tried that before, and it doesn't lead to a better place. So I would encourage everyone to be part of history here in Thornhill this election. Vote for your values, and let's get a real conservative voice in Parliament for once. Wouldn't that be great? And I thank you all for watching here tonight.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank Samuel for joining us tonight. It's very important that we speak about these issues. And again, his, when he has one of his volunteers knocking on doors with him, and they happen to randomly knock on the door that Bernie Farber lives there, and Bernie Farber starts making these accusations of you're associated with white supremacists and how are like this moral authority, and I mean the associations that Bernie has, and let him answer. He can come on the show. He can answer. He's a big boy. Let him answer. He also calls on people to support Antifa. Antifa, I mean, they're a violent extremist group that definitely the military arm, I guess you could say, of the woke movement. If you don't adopt our woke ideology, we're going to take a baseball bat to you. That's Antifa for you. Everybody else is a fascist. And by the way, they also hate Israel, Antifa. They're right into the BDS, 100%. Very much anti-Israel. And when you say BDS, it's kind of like sweet talking the Nazi movement of today, because that's how vicious the anti-Semitism is from the BDS. It's not a sweet human rights organization. We were founded in Ramallah. The organizations behind the BDS are Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, etc., and they want Israel destroyed. In fact, the founder of the BDS, Omar Barghouti, he makes it clear they won't accept a Jewish state of any size. That's the founder of the BDS. They call for an intifada. An intifada is when you kill Jews. You blow up cafes and pizza parlors. And the BDS today, they're calling to globalize the intifada. So this is the new Nazi movement of today. Attack anyone who supports Israel and attack the West. That's essentially it. It's another form of the Taliban, dressed up. Okay, so our doctor in the studio, we got the song?
We got a song today. I want to tell you a little bit about it. It was actually suggested by Uri Gobi, who I'm not sure who follows him, but he follows us. He's certainly a very big voice. You look at his various organizations. So I just wanted to give a little pitch out and kind of credit where credit is due, because this song I found on his website, on his Facebook page, and it's a powerful song which he felt was most appropriate in the recent murder of a 21-year-old Israeli. The song's in Hebrew, but basically, briefly, it's just talking about hugging your children, taking care of your children, just remembering how important they are. And so here's the song, and we'll talk to you all afterwards.
הזמן הוא טס, זה לא נתפס שאני אבא מקיץ מהילדות אל המציאות שאני חי בה. זוכר איך אחרי 3 נגמר האוויר, אמרתי חכי, אמרת לי תראה, הם קצת יגדלו ותבין. פתאום הם 6, עוד רגע 7, וכמה שהם מדהימים, אבל הלחץ גדל, בנה לו מגדל, הלב יש רק 2 חדרים, והמצפון עובד גם שבתות וחגים. אתם השנה כבר שנים, אני עוד שבוי בפחדים שלי. אני לא אספיק להגיע, לשמור להציל להושיע, לספוג במקומות הקליע. אוי כמה הלב הוא פגיע, אני מתפלל על הילדים שלי, שלא ירשו את הסריטות שלי, שיחפו אחד את השני, הם שיהיו בריאים תמיד. מתפלל על הילדים שלי, שלא ירשו את הסריטות שלי, שיחפו אחד את השני, הם שיהיו בריאים תמיד. אני רוצה להיות שם בשבילם בדיוק כמו שהבטחתי, לשבת בסופו של יום לדעת שהצלחתי. בינתיים סופר ניצחונות קטנים, מבסוט שלא ברחתי, לשירותים או למחשב פשוט עצרתי והקשבתי לסיפורים על ציפורים, למחשבות, לציורים, לחלומות שיום אחד יגשימו. לגיבורים, לנסיכות עם העיניים השותקות, יש ים סודות אם באמת תקשיבו ותשירו. שלא ירשו את הסריטות שלי, שיחבקו אחד את השני, אמן שיהיו בריאים תמיד. עומד מתבונן ביציע, צופה מהצד ומריע, גם בתהום גם ברקיע, עוזר את הכל ומגיע. שלא ירשו את הסריטות שלי, רק תחבקו אחד את השני, אמן שתהיו בריאים תמיד. תגידו אמן על הילדים שלנו, שיהיו בריאים תמיד, שיהיו שמחים תמיד, שלא ישמעו את אזעקה אחת בחיים שלהם, שלא ידעו את מלחמה אחת בחיים שלהם, שאף אחד ואף אחת לא יפגע בהם, לא בגוף, לא בנפש, לא בכיתה ולא ברחוב. שיזכרו וידעו תמיד תמיד שאנחנו אוהבים אותם, גם כשאנחנו לא תמיד מראים את זה, וגם כשאין לנו סבלנות אנחנו אוהבים אותם אין סוף, אין סוף, אין סוף. בוא נשאיר להם עוד אחד ביחד. מוכנים?
Wow, that's pretty powerful. Very powerful song. Sam.
Shalom Aleinu.